Hey everybody, welcome to my booth. I'm Jay. Today's sample is from Jared. Jared is curious how one can trust one's own sound. He's got an A-B, processed, unprocessed audio, and is wondering how you can tell if you've done it good or not. Before we dive in, if you would like me to review audio of yours, there's a form. It's in the description. Send me something. What are you waiting for? And then if you like this stuff and you find it helpful, you can pay it forward by clicking the buttons. Or if you're feeling particularly generous, I say this every time lately because it's true. The ranks of the booth buddies ever grow. So if you want to see what that's all about, it's all down there somewhere. All right, Jared. So as I said, we've got an A and we've got a B. One is processed, one is unprocessed. See if you can tell which one is which. We'll listen to just the first little stanza of each and then talk a bit.
It had always been a modest community, established first as an unnamed base camp for prospectors whose gill-hungry eyes fixated upon the mountain's unique flora and fauna.
Alrighty.
It had always been a modest community, established first as an unnamed base camp for prospectors whose gill-hungry eyes fixated upon the mountain's unique flora and fauna.
Okay. Well, before we start talking, lock in your answers now. We'll give one more go around for those of you. Headphones would be helpful.
It had always been a modest community, established first as an unnamed base camp for prospectors whose gill-hungry eyes fixated upon the mountain's unique flora and fauna. It had always been a modest community, established first as an unnamed base camp for prospectors whose gill-hungry eyes fixated upon the mountain's unique flora and fauna.
Okay. So, first things first, Jared, I think you've done a pretty respectable job processing your audio. And this is really case in point of how we can get in our heads, you know, in terms of trusting our own audio. Because first things first, the second one is the unprocessed, and this is the processed. And there are a few cues that give it away, but the bottom line here is they both sound great. So you don't have to sweat it, really, is kind of the moral of this story. And it really would somewhat be a dealer's choice as to how you prefer your sound to be. And I know that's kind of a frustrating answer, but really and truly, like, I'll have an existential identity crisis on an annual basis almost, if not more frequently than that, and go through everything, rework my whole everything, and just have a ton of self-doubt and all that jazz, particularly when it comes to this question of, am I doing it right? And that cascades to a whole other realm of stuff. But the moral of the story here is if you, A, have a good recording space, as clearly Jared has a good setup because the raw, unprocessed audio, it sounds great. And to be perfectly honest, for a lot of applications, namely, this sounds like it's coming from an audiobook or a narration of some sort or some similar thing. I would be inclined toward the unprocessed sound personally. And the reason why is as you process your sound, it's this weird human thing where we're like, at first blush, I would be willing to, wager that a majority of people will be slightly inclined toward the processed sound simply by virtue of the fact that it is punchier and more, it's punchier and other stuff. But if I sound like this, all of a sudden people lean forward and they're all like, wow, this is impressive and it sounds really, this sound grabs attention. But it's far less permeable and human because it is that larger than life. This is all very, very subjective. I should say that now, but this is subjective. And people, if you're looking for like a really powerful first impression, generally speaking, like in commercials and stuff, a more processed sound is what you'll hear. And that's strictly the reason. You've got a very short window to get people's attention and hold on to it and tell a good story. And that's when processed sound like this is, when this becomes relevant. And for me in audiobooks, I like to be able to relate to the person I'm listening to in a really human, imperfect, accessible. And what I mean by permeable is that you come through the recording sounding like you in a really, really great way. Anyway, that's enough of that diatribe. But to your other question as to how to trust your sound, that's a big question that, as I said, I struggle with often. And the way that I have, there are a couple ways that I've found that are really helpful at, tempering my panic and stuff like that. The first is to find audio, either like ads here on YouTube as an example, or going to like websites of other voice talent that I respect, go to Audible, listen to some of their in-house recorded titles, and just do an A/B comparison between your sound and what you're hearing in the world that's actively being produced. And in doing an A/B comparison, I've found more often than not that it's truly somewhat shocking that you're like, this sounds bleh, or it's really good at boosting your confidence. At least it has been for me in some respects. And also, it's a great sort of ear training and educational tool that you have at your disposal at all times. If you That's how I made most of my demos. I went to like really prominent and well-renowned, well-respected demo producers, listened to their repertoire of created demos for a myriad of different voice artists. And I was like, okay, so if that's an award-winning voiceover demo, I'll try and make mine sound kind of like that. And my demos are fairly dated at this point in many respects, but I have good demos, and most of them, all of them, I've made myself. So, and it got me, it's done me well. So that's how I've trained my ear and learned to trust what I'm doing. Also, you can just ask engineers. If you're working with an audio engineer, or if you meet an audio engineer like on LinkedIn, you can reach out to a few of them, I'm sure. I haven't done this because I just have some personal friends who are audio engineers that I just ask, hey, can you give this a listen and give me your honest opinions? Or voiceover artists, hey, can you give me your honest opinion like we're doing right here? And ask them. But all this is to say, Jared, I think that really it is a dealer's choice. If you like one sound over the other, and one makes you feel more confident, feel better, then just banish the doubt, go in on what you think makes you sound more like yourself and more confident, and roll with that. Yeah. A couple little things that I did notice, just to note for you. In listening, there are a couple moments where it sounds like it's been stitched. I don't know that it has been, but there's like jumps in volume, like this one here.
Even after Nibelheim had proven itself a nominally permanent fixture worthy of a name, it was still little more than a basic settlement in the wilderness, consisting of a few households.
Yeah,
offering...
there. You can actually even see here in the audio edit, you can see where the cut came in, more or less. And so edits like that, a great way to smooth it out so that it sounds good both in your processed and unprocessed audio. Using like a lead-in is really, really valuable in making sure that you have a smooth flow when you're doing a punch-in like this. So the way that I'll do that is if I have to record this sentence, in Adobe Audition it works this way, but you can do it any number of... There are a lot of ways, but the general gist is as you go to record, listen and speak along with your exact patter for the moment before you need to punch in, and that will give you the accurate amount of breath time between the end of this phrase right here and the start of this phrase, because right now this seems maybe a little bit unnatural. And additionally, the point here in this sample that is important to make is there's a odd sounding, not in a way that I'm like, ugh, but it sounds unnatural in a way where the edit is made more apparent. That there's like a jump in volume and a sort of like skipping of the chain, as it were. If we're cruising along, the chain goes and skips a bit. And so if I talk along to this bit...
It was still little more than a basic settlement in the wilderness, consisting of a few households.
It was still little more than a basement in the wilderness, consisting, and that consisting the transition is smoother from the end of that into the consisting, whereas right now the edit is clear because it goes a basement in the wilderness. Consisting, and it's clear that they were started with completely different energies at more or less different times. So that's a nice little edit trick that will help everything sound smoother. But yeah, Jared, overall, really, really solid work processing this. Trust yourself. And I can give you specific notes, but I really don't want to get in your head because I feel like you've done a really solid job. And you can just tweak the compression back a bit if you wanted a more natural sound. And where it's at is a great setting. If I heard either of these in an audiobook, I'm somewhat rambling, but if I heard either of these in an audiobook, I would not bat an eye twice at either of them. They both sound great to me. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for you, mate, and to everybody else as well out there. Until the next one of these, be well, and I'll see you soon. Toodles.